Hello, is Matt on the line?
This is Matt.
Hi, it's Victoria. I've gone ahead and started the recording of the session.
Okay.
And I see that you guys have the PowerPoint all loaded up, so that's great.
Yep.
All right. When we're finished with the recording or with the session today, I'll go ahead and work with the clearinghouse to get it converted over, and I'll work on posting it on YouTube for everybody. And I'll be able to chop off the beginning part before 2 o'clock, this portion right now, so it won't, they won't have to listen to all this.
Right. Very good.
Okay. Well, I'm going to mute myself and just let you guys run with it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, David, I would have expected David by now, so.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be on here shortly.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Good afternoon, David.
Hi, Victoria. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Sorry I'm a little late, but looks like we finally have a contract.
Good for you.
So I was
That's
spending the
excellent.
day playing, trying to come up with the official titles, though I'm not sure how you're supposed to do that by some national database. But, oh well.
Okay. Well, you've had a few more people register since this morning.
I see that. We're up to 11 if I haven't missed somebody.
Yeah. And I'm just going to mute myself and stay in the background, but
You're here
I wanted
just...
to
Cool.
Yeah, I wanted to get on and start the recording so we could make sure we had that.
Do that.
Okay. Thank you both, you and Matt. So
Not a problem.
I'll mute now. Thanks.
Hopefully this works. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, Victoria.
Okay.
Good afternoon. So those of you who can see green grass and a dandelion, if you know how to raise your hand, please do so, just to see if y'all all know how to use that tool in the webinar, and that I know you're here. 3 people, 1 person. If you're not sure, it's up on the top bar. There should be a place you should be able to raise your hand. Here we go. That's good to know. By the way, if you're wondering, that particular picture was taken next to my driveway by my wife this morning. So I actually want snow, but that's just me. Welcome to the afternoon session on resource syntheses. Let me go back to the other share that I had open. I just wanted to make sure that worked before we got going too far. Okay, we're back to the PowerPoint presentation we're going to start with. My name is David Orr. I'm with the Cornell Local Roads program here in New York. And we're going to be joined also this morning by Matt Carter with the Delaware T-Squared Center. Say hello, Matt.
Hello, Matt.
You did you watch Burns and Allen as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, always classic, always classic. So we're going to start with just a very short presentation, but please feel free to ask questions in the chat pod. Please feel free to speak up if you really want to, but the chat pod is going to work really well. When I'm going droning on, Matt will be watching and vice versa. So we'll try to answer your questions as we get to them, and we'll get moving here. Now, in terms of what are already available in terms of training resource syntheses, we've prepared with the Training Resource Workgroup 6. We'll talk a lot about details on these later on, but the 6 we have are winter maintenance and pavement preservation, which we'll cover in a little more detail today. The Highway Safety Manual, work zones, asset management, and pavement wearing courses. Now, yeah, I know you're in the middle of a storm there in Montana. I know. You can send the snow here. It won't bother me. We're going to start with a little question here for you. So we're going to do a poll. Here we go. Here is a list, let me start it, of the 6 resource syntheses that have been produced. And if you would check if you've used any or all of them, there are 6. And if you have not, click the bottom box where it says none. And I'll even be nice and go ahead and show everybody the results. Okay, so Matt, here's our audience. Most people have used none. So out of
Yeah, we got a few takers.
That's good. That's why we've got this. Yeah, a couple on work zone, and 1 each on winter maintenance and pavement preservation. Unless, of course, I didn't check, but maybe you checked your own, Matt.
I did, so that's me.
Oh, okay. I'm going to end that poll and we're going to move on. We'll come back later on. Okay. Now, if you would like to download any of these resource syntheses we're talking about today, please feel free to do so. They're available on the LTAP website. Just go into Workgroups, Training Resources, and Files. I would say you can just click on Category Resource Syntheses under the category listing, but they don't all work. So just so you know and be aware of that. You may have to go to page 2 to see a few of them. I'm working on getting that changed. But 3 of the syntheses do show up if you just click on Category Syntheses, but a couple of them don't.
Yeah, you'll probably see that change a little bit over time as we work with the communications work group.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely working to get that cleaned up. Hey, it's a new website. There's a lot of good tools out there worth looking into. So who can use and why would you want to use the resource syntheses? Matt and I sort of made a list up of the things we thought about. Obviously, if you're developing a brand new workshop, this would be a great place to go to get started to know what's out there, what's available. Hang on a sec. That's so noisy. So that'd be one very valuable reason. If you've got existing materials, you want to see what's new and what you want to add to your existing training materials, that's a place to go. Learning about changes that have occurred since you've developed materials. Even just developing stuff for a presentation, it can be a good place to go to see, oh, wait a second, there's something here. In fact, I should have clicked the work zone one because I looked at the work zone one for a work zone session I'm doing next month for our county superintendents here in New York. If you're answering a technical assistance question, especially in a topic where you're not really familiar, there can be some really good places to find resources. And of course, finding out what existing training materials are already out there. No point reinventing the wheel for anything that you're trying to do. Now, in terms of the information that's available, I'm just going to list them here right now. We're going to walk through 2 of these here in just a couple of minutes. But there's a name of the resources that are available. There's a type. You'll see what we're talking about in a minute. There's a duration, especially if it's a training class. How long is the training class, or how long was it designed to be used? An hour long, a full day, something like that. Who's the audience? Is it a basic neophyte like myself? Is it somebody who's an expert? Who's the person who's the audience? The difficulty level, which may be, maybe a different audience, it may be the same audience, but, is this somebody who's brand new in, say, the supervisory role, or is it somebody who's, sort of you want somebody who's got a lot of experience as well? You're having difficulty downloading the second file. Well, I can tell you this much. If you can't get it, if it drives you nuts, just pop us an email. Yeah, Victoria's right. We can email it to you. And I can also post this on the workgroup website. I'll do that after we're done. A description of the website is useful for everybody. And then, of course, there's any cost involved. And, of course, finally, the contact information. And we'll walk through those in just a couple of minutes. Oh, there's the first one. So let me step back here for just a second. We're going to start with the first one. And this is the one on pavement preservation. And I'm just listing here, this is just a quick summary of the different organizations that we looked at when we were developing the one on pavement preservation. So as you can see, there were 8 different national level and international level organizations that we dealt with, from the National Center for Pavement Preservation and the Foundation for Pavement Preservation and different associations and Federal Highway, NHI. And we actually got stuff from 4 different LTAP, TTAP centers, though I will admit, we're going to show this in a minute, there's a lot of stuff we could add to this, and we know we would like to. So I'm going to go back to my sharing, and I'm going to go back to my share, and hit the button, and then it highlights everything, so I have to pull it all back down. Now, everybody should see, as soon as I make it big enough, everybody should see what looks like a big spreadsheet, because it is. If you don't see a spreadsheet, raise your hand or pop me a note that says, what's the word choices here, disagree or something like that, so we can catch that. So this is the pavement preservation training resource. So it's in a spreadsheet format. And if you're wondering how the format came about, well, this is something that Victoria Beal put together. And it really was sort of actually nice to make sure that we didn't miss something. So that we made sure we got everything for every training resource that we've got. So as we come across the top here, and I'm going to blow it up a little bit in size so you can actually read it. And then scroll to the left. So you can see there's the name of the item, in this case, Basic Concepts for Pavement Preservation. Okay. Then, an instructor-led training course, duration for 1 day. The audience is elected officials, mid to senior engineers, public works directors, pavement managers, and road superintendents. We're going to scroll to the right. Basic information as opposed to the one below, which is for intermediate. And the description, I won't read the whole description to you, but you can see there's a nice description summarizing the long description they provided. Most of the time, at least when I was developing the couple I've done, I didn't write the entire description down that was provided. I tried to simplify it down to, at most, a couple of sentences. And then, of course, a cost. In this particular case, it's about $100 to $150 per person to have the training session brought out and taught by the folks from the National Center for Pavement Preservation. But a lot of times, these materials might cost, if you have the center do it, in this case, But if you can get the materials, you might be able to develop something yourself. Okay? So now I'm going to scroll down here on purpose. I want to go down. Up. There's a web-based training module from NHI. There's a lot of these in here because they had just come out with that whole series. But I want to purposely come all the way down. I know you're probably going, what's he doing? What's he doing? He's trying to give people with, here we go. Going to have the LTAP Center stuff there at the bottom. Why was it at the bottom? And it just happened to be the way we put it in. So I'm going to come over here to the Corner Local Roads Program publication number on asphalt paving principles. I just want to show you something. This is a point that we want to stress. So I'm going to scroll to the right, and I'm going to notice way over on the right, a lot of cases we have links, especially when we've got links to like websites. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And unable to open cannot be found. Oh my goodness, it's not working. Well, that's because websites change over time. And we know these things can get out of date. So if you come across something that needs fixing, please let us know. Because this is where it should have gone. It should have gone to this page right here. So as you're using these, those websites all worked when we put them together, but we know a couple of them are old, so please feel free to fix them. But as you come across them, we'll clean them up. You can find them. So let's go find asphalt paving principles. There it is, asphalt paving principles. I'll click. And you can actually see one of our workshop manuals, and it's going to make me log in. I'm not going to do that, only because it's a pain. You don't have to do that. I do. It's just welcome to the way it works. But you can actually see our manual. You can see all of our manuals in our particular case, and this is true in most of these LTAP ones. I really like that because then you can find other things. For instance, we also have a workshop on pavement maintenance. We also have a workshop on, there's a third one I wanted to highlight, pavement maintenance and, where'd it go, Dave? Oh. Managing the highway department. It's going to make me log in again, but I'm not going to do it. The point is there's information out there. You might be thinking, I need something on pavement preservation, and you look up above and you go, wait a second. There's something there that's from September of 2015. That's brand new. What's there? You might find something on a topic totally unrelated to what you were thinking about, like, for instance, complete streets on bicycles or things like that. So we found that as we're going through, it's really pretty nice. Just do a little bit of wandering. So I'm going to do one more wandering here. We're going to go visit Victoria's webpage. You'll notice in this particular case, you actually went to the LTAP resource webpage. Sometimes we did that. Sometimes we went directly to website. So you can see the developer information. This is right out of the database. Thank you, Susan, for doing all this. And then you might have to log in to get files, but that's okay. All the things you need to know are here, and you can get information in that respect. Okay? There are tons of ways for you to get information and resources. And if you need a class on pavement preservation, this will get you started and hopefully send you in the right direction. With that, I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, wait. Note from Victoria. Our website was just updated during the Thanksgiving week, so any links I provided might need to be updated as well. Yeah, well, that's okay. That's the whole, one of the points we're going to make, we're going to come back to again and again. That we know we need to make changes, but there's still good information. We're doing the same thing on our webpage too, which is one of the reasons I didn't log in. So let me do one more poll question for you, and then we're going to let Matt get going. Okay, so now, before Matt gets going, I want you to think about this. You can go ahead and vote, or you can wait, because I'm going to bring this one back up towards the end. But I want you to think about, as he's talking, are you in need of any training materials for workshops, for presentations, for technical assistance, newsletters, general knowledge? Okay, and again, you can do multiple. And if you've got some other thing we hadn't thought about, click on the other and type it in the chat pod. Okay, I'm not going to close the poll, but I am going to hide it. And I'm going to let Matt get started with winter maintenance.
Okay, thanks, David. So it's similar to the slides you just saw on pavement preservation. This is just to give you an idea of the major source areas that we found information when we were developing the winter maintenance synthesis. And so again, one of the goals, and you know, Victoria as chair of the work group at the time sort of championed the idea of these syntheses from a more rudimentary concept that we were playing around with at the time. And as David said, she proposed a structure to these that we tweaked a little bit and we found was very, very helpful. And part of what we want to do with these is try to keep a consistent format that has sort of concise information for you so that you can quickly get at things. One of the other goals that we had with these was that we wanted to sort of draw from, for each topic, a number of different source areas. So for example, it would be easy enough in doing the work zone safety synthesis to sort of get lost in the work zone clearinghouse website. There's lots and lots of materials there. So there's an example of where we exercised some discipline, picked a handful of items for the synthesis there, and relied on what David was just talking about, that when you go there, you're probably going to sort of browse around and find lots of things on your own, and we sort of provided the starter kit. So we really wanted to, for each one of these, draw on multiple resource areas, partly because in addition to drawing your attention to specific training resources that you can use, we also know that in some instances, perhaps you aren't familiar with that particular resource, or you wouldn't think to go there normally. And so maybe there'll be a couple of examples of that with the winter maintenance one. So let's just take a moment and explore there. So I'm going to, where am I going to share up here? David, where do I go to share? I see stop sharing. David, did you go get lunch?
Oh, I hit mute. That's no,
Oh,
I did not go lunch.
I see
okay, I stopped sharing.
There we go. There we go. That's what I want. So I'm just going to share my screen as a way to pull up. Oops. So I'll go and bring this guy up. So again, as David had indicated, you know, you can find all these from the LTAP website. Again, you'll see this change a little bit as the communications work group plays around with the website. It's a little bit of a work in process, but they're just sort of tweaking some things. But you will find those there under files. And again, we expect that probably this category thing will be straightened out. We'll dress that up a little bit. So for example, David mentioned you need to go to page 2 for some of these. And so, for example, that's where the winter maintenance one is. And that's one where, because it wasn't categorized, the category thing doesn't work quite the way we want to just at this point, but it will soon. So this is the winter maintenance synthesis. And, you know, you see the same format as the one David was just talking about. This one was last updated, you'll note, in 2012. So it won't be surprising that it has a couple of broken links or other things. Although a lot of these are fairly stable resources. But so to David's earlier point, one of the items that we have in the work plan for the Training Resources Work Group this year is we'll be going through and systematically updating these in terms of sort of looking, are there new resources that ought to be added in? Are the links still good? Those kinds of things. And absolutely, if we haven't already, we'll want to be taking any suggestions that anybody from the community has given us of new resources or broken links or things like that, and rolling those all in as well. It is my hope and my expectation that if you guys point out to us as you use these broken links, we'll get to those in real time or relative real time. Some of the other things like suggestions of additional resources, we may wait until we get to that update in a month or two. But either way, we really are going to rely on the community to help us sort of make these dynamic. So here, you'll see some different kinds of examples. So here there's, on looking at the source or the contacts on the side, you'll see that this first page are all from the LTAP resource database. But if you look at the resource type, it's a fairly large cross-section. So some of these are just a participant manual up there at the top. Some are newsletters, photographs, a workbook, videos that you can draw off of, things like this. So part of what we try to accomplish is give you a variety of resource types in these and point you in that direction, realizing that for some of us, we are starting from scratch, building a whole new set of materials, and so our needs are very broad, very wide. For some of us, we're updating an old resource and we just need some new or different photographs or videos or things like that. So there's a lot of different resource types that you will typically see in these syntheses. And some of them are, relatively small, short, resources, and some are quite extensive, like the graphics collection I've referenced here that is broader than just winter maintenance. As we go down through the pages, and I won't belabor this, again, as David pointed out with the previous one, you'll see there are some basic resources, there are some intermediate, there are some advanced sometimes. And we want to point to a lot of different, again, here's another example of different resources that we want to point you to. So here we've relied on the Build a Better Mousetrap competitions for some things that, with the idea of these are things that we can draw to the attention of participants as we're going through a winter maintenance class. So, here you'll see that there are, NHI resources, there's federal highway resources. The SALT Institute is a natural kind of thing. In fact, when I checked this morning, at least one of these SALT Institutes was broken. And I actually left it alone because I was going to click on it to show what David just showed, but I won't repeat the exercise. That, we realize that we will have some broken links here, and we're going to more systematically update these to keep them current. The other part of this too, this is another illustration, is where it would be understandable, and I think we had this discussion back when we started this process, was, do we just want to find resources that are free? We decided that we didn't want to limit ourselves to that. Cost was an important item to list in this, so that if you say, well, my budget is $4 for the whole thing, then, well, we know where you stand, and you're most interested in those no-cost things. But we wanted everybody to know that there are some resources that sometimes are well worth considering in terms of putting some money down for. So whether that's an NHI course or an APWA snow conference or any of a number of other things. So that's sort of the long and short of it in terms of winter maintenance. And so I'll go ahead and jump out of that and stop sharing so we can go back and sort of just wrap up the presentation part of this and get to some Q&A on this. So David, let me turn it back to you now.
Okay. Let me find the right share. I think it's this one. Nope. course, I thought I had named it, but now I can't, of course, find my name. You know how that goes. Well, I tell you what, I can.
I think this is the time where I'm supposed to be vamping with something interesting, but
No. I got an alternative way to do this thing. So you can help, essentially. You can help us by using these. The more you use them, the happier we'll be. You can help us by filling in those holes. If you see a hole or a broken link or something that needs updating, just let anybody who's on the work group know. Matt, myself, obviously, Victoria's on the work group, but we're trying to get somebody from every region to be on there. You can help us by sharing new materials. And of course, you could also help us by developing a topic. Now, before we get too far, what I want to do is I don't want to forget the question we asked earlier. So let me go find that poll that I did name. This is how and I'll show you the results we had before we did the discussions. So you can see the results. A lot of people needed them for workshops. A lot of people needed them for presentations. And there are other issues that people need training materials for. So the variety's good. That's exactly what we were hoping we would see. So I'm going to end this poll and open another one, which I think is much more critical. In addition to updating our existing 6 training resource workgroup syntheses, we would like to get your opinions on where should we be going next? What other syntheses should we be looking at developing? And to do that, I'll make it easy so you don't have to remember. You should be able to now see both polls. The poll that we had earlier about which ones you've used, it lists the 6, and then the question of which ones would you like to see us add. So put them in the text box. Put in whatever you think. You can put in more than one, by the way. It's pretty nice. We don't care. One of the things we're going to be doing over the next couple of months at the winter meeting and on our conference calls each month is figuring out which 1, 2, or 3 we might try to develop next. So see a couple. We see culvert maintenance, a couple on gravel roads. I don't see Ken Scorsese's name on here, Matt. He must have snuck in.
It's a draw on him.
We got 3. I was hoping we got a few more, but you can.
Yeah, we're going to be drawing as we come up with new topic areas. We're going to be looking for guidance to the needs assessment that we did. It's starting to get a little bit old. It was about 2 to 3 years ago now, but we still think it's largely relevant, and we're going to draw some guidance from that. And certainly some of this reflects that. But whether it's right now as we ask this question or as you think about it a week or 2 weeks or 2 months from now, absolutely let us know, the Training Resources Work Group, so that we can make sure that we reflect that in our planning.
And then finally, the other thing is if you've developed something that could be turned into a training resource, it doesn't have to be complete. And we'd rather have good information to share, even if we know, it's not complete, because it's never going to be complete. It's never going to be completely done. We're always going to be adding new materials. We may need to remove materials. But if you've done this exercise and you'd be willing to put one in, let us know. We'd help you. There's an interesting one, Matt. The third one down?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the point. I think in any of this, whether we're doing a needs assessment or even within our centers when we reach out to our locals and say what kind of training do we need, it's always sort of hard to get people to give us ideas because usually we're catching them cold anyway. But the other thing is that when we are successful, what I find is that we do get some that I say, that one would not have occurred to me for any of a variety of reasons. It's maybe not what I'm wired to think about. It's not in my wheelhouse, so I don't think about it. But absolutely, and I like the fact that we've got both the identified need and somebody who's willing to step up and help us with that as well.
And
David,
by the way, the reason
can we capture who's telling us that?
Well, that's the reason why I was hoping they would put it into the chat box. The reason we want you to use the chat box for that last question is so that we get your name.
We probably should have structured it differently, yeah.
Yeah, we probably should have.
No. There we go.
Yep.
So we're getting it now.
We're getting it now. But yeah, that's true. I probably should put in. I'll put in the one that. I'll go and put in my own, just since we just did a brand new workshop.
Well, and that's a perfect time to do it, as David mentions, because for these first 6 that we did, there were 3 or 4 of us that put them together. In each case, I think the person that stepped up to the plate was a natural fit for it because he or she was working on it in some capacity. So, for example, I think Victoria, if I remember correctly, did the highway safety manual because she had been digging in pretty deep for a variety of reasons there in terms of what kind of training options there were. Winter maintenance, I had just finished developing from the ground up a winter maintenance course. I think similarly, David, with the couple that he did and so on. And so, these probably we think work best when they're developed by somebody who not necessarily is the single best subject matter expert in the entire country on it, but more importantly, somebody who has sort of started to go through it fairly in a fairly involved way recently. So there's a lot of fresh resources that person will have found, and so it's just a natural fit. And so we would love to have folks who fall into that category jump in and volunteer to put one of these together. And again, even if it's sort of all of these are going to start out as a version 1.0. And we imagine that some of them will go through many iterations over time as they get added to, and that's fine. But a version 1.0 does not need to be a perfect product right out of the gate. All of it is just a starter kit.
I concur completely. So we've got 4 suggestions for ideas. We've got a couple of folks who possibly volunteered. That's good. That's where we want to see.
So David, are we ready to open it up to some Q&A?
Absolutely. Let's open it up.
I assume the lines are open. You didn't close them, did you?
I didn't close them.
So as far as I know, everybody's live. If you have any problems getting through, just shoot something in the chat pod, and we'll try to open you up. But, you heard us sort of talk at you about these things, and it's not that they're horribly complicated by any means, but we really would like to hear from you in terms of any questions you have about them or suggestions, or that you want to join the team is a great one as well.
This is Denise from North Dakota.
Hello, Denise. How's your weather?
It's good right now, but when Michelle said that she's in the middle of a storm, I'm pretty sure it's headed our way. But I was just going to mention that I've seen this tool before, and for some reason I just forget to use it. Maybe as a worker, maybe just sending out some reminders more often, and maybe you are doing that, but I tend to forget about using this, so maybe just a little more marketing would be great.
That's a really good point, and I think we all have things that we come across and say, oh, I forgot about that. I could have used that a month ago when I was doing this thing. And of course, just like any of the other work groups or anybody in particular, we do struggle a little bit with, sort of overhyping something or bringing it up too many times. But probably we have been fairly quiet on this topic for a while. And so, I mean, if nothing else, certainly, David, I think it bears being in updates that we do at the Winter Business Meeting and the National Conference for sure. But you're exactly right, Denise. It's easy to sort of let this go back into the recesses of the mind.
We'll do that, Denise.
Who else has questions or thoughts or comments or criticisms? We take those too.
Hey, Matt, this is James Martin, and I just want to say what you guys have put together is outstanding and I think very useful. It sort of seems like we're doing some of the things that perhaps the clearinghouse attempted to offer. I'm not sure how up to date their online information is in terms of searching for course materials, but it's a little bit redundant, but I think we're hitting the nail on the head, and what you guys have done look really good.
Well, thanks. And I mean, and the idea is for these not necessarily to be redundant of each other, and we hope they're not. I mean, so for example, in most of these, we draw where there's the opportunity for it from the resource database that's on LTAP.org. But yeah, I mean, there's almost assuredly going to be some overlap in the efforts, and that's okay as long as it's not genuinely redundant.
And as Victoria just typed in the box there, they're really bite-sized versions. What we're trying to do is help people sort of get a quick summary. And also sometimes we find things as you're developing materials that aren't necessarily on the clearinghouse. And so it's a quick way for us to do an update and someone to get a quick scan of what's out there and available. And it actually makes you a little more efficient if you are going to do a search on the clearinghouse. So you sort of know, okay, here's what's already out there. Here's some of the things we know on the clearinghouse website. Here's some of the keywords I might want to look for, things of that ilk.
Yeah, and the other goal that's along those lines is, again, the resource database that's on the clearinghouse, as I understand it, was always intended to be a sort of collection of what kind of resources we have within our centers, and that's a great place to start. But I think the resource syntheses hopefully reflect the fact that for many of us, as we go digging around, we want to draw off as many resources as we can, and as any of us who have gone down that path know, you can, I spent an entire summer, ironically, working on winter maintenance materials, and, thought I put together a pretty decent set of materials that I was ready to work with. And yet, over the next 4, 5, 6 months, as I was past the stage of gathering them, I nonetheless came across other resources that were beyond where I was looking. So, the idea is, David will stumble across resources that I would not, and right on down the line of everybody on this call. So this is, in a way, a very structured brainstorming exercise, if you want to think of it that way. Other questions or comments from the group? Somebody must have a criticism or can make one up.
No, maybe not.
Oh, wow. I can only fish so long.
Yeah, we're not going to fish that much longer.
And I'm happy to end on James's compliment, but yeah, I mean, it's it is really something. I know, for some of you, as Denise said, she's certainly one who has seen these before and looked at them. But there may very well be a couple of you on the webinar today who really haven't looked at all closely at these before. I would encourage you to do so. Take a look at them, to help us out. Give us your feedback. Absolutely, if you're at a point where you can make use of them right now, that's the best way to test them. And give us your feedback, whether that's to call in on one of our monthly conference calls, or to contact one of us directly, or put something in the forum, however you want to do it. But your feedback as an end user of this would be great, and hopefully you'd sort of catch the energy to develop one on your own and contribute, which would be fantastic. The more voices and sort of perspectives we have on these, the better.
And I'll concur what Matt says, and we'll be nice to you. We're going to give you back 18 minutes of your day. We're not going to fill up the time just to fill up the time.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Yep, and we got a couple of people typing. If you want to hang, let's see what the people. Oh, we got to thank you. That's all right. Yeah. So thanks, folks, and have a good afternoon.